Okay, well, welcome everybody. I got a lot of familiar faces, so that'll be easy to remember names. But this is PSAT SAT review. We're just going to go ahead and look at strategies and tips, concepts that are hopefully going to be, by the time you get out of here, able to help you raise your score on both the PSAT and the SAT. So really today is just the introduction. We'll talk about syllabus, class expectations, all that good stuff. So if you are somebody from my other class, just kind of hang out for a little bit because it's going to be a lot of the same material. But let's go ahead and get to it. So first up, let's talk about the syllabus. Okay. So I'm not going to go ahead and read this thing verbatim. I'll let you go ahead and take a look at it at some point. I just want to go ahead and highlight some of these areas. First off, absences. If you're absent, you really want to go ahead and be looking at the websites. And I'll go ahead and show you the website in just a second, but as you notice, I'm already recording. I go ahead and record our lessons. I post video links along with all the notes. That's okay, come on in. Okay. Is it Emery? Yeah. Okay, so I have you right there. And I want to say, Sarah? Yeah. Okay, I have you right there. And I got a couple of papers up here for this. There you go. You're welcome. So right now we're just talking about the syllabus. Okay. So if you're absent, just please be looking at that website. It's where I'm going to post all the notes that I hand you. We work from skeleton copies, which means we fill them in as we go. I'm going to record my lessons. I'm going to post a video link at the end of each day. So if you are absent, you can go ahead and click on that link. It'll take you right to the video. Or if you just had so much fun in class that day and you want to relive it, you can just go click on that link anytime and you're good to go. Moving down here, grades. We don't have a district assessment in here, so it's going to be 70-30. We're going to have one exam per 9 weeks. So you took those last week. So one part of that's going to be math, one part of that's going to be English. So we're already good on that for this 9 weeks. Everything else we do, quizzes, daily grades, things of that nature, is going to fall into that 70% category. Okay. The thing that I'm going to say about this class is that it is really, really, really difficult to fail. Okay. See what I did there? Okay. I mean, honestly, if you're just not doing anything, that's really the only way that you're going to fail this class. Okay, I try to make this as super easy as I possibly can. Late work, we don't take grades on homework, but you will need to take a look at them. What I do is I give you time to look at the assignment. Then we talk about the assignment together, and then there's a quiz over that material. Now, let's say you score below an 80 on the quiz. If you want to go ahead and retake that quiz, you have to have the completed homework assignment turned in before we go ahead and do that. Okay. So it not only helps you with the skills, kind of helps you understand the concept, but it also kind of ensures that should you need to, you can go ahead and retake. Okay. Really, I don't think cheating would even be an issue in here, and you're going to see why as we go through. As far as the supplies go, you just make sure to have your badge every day, pen or pencil. Obviously, either is fine. I would encourage you a binder because I've got a hole punch over there from my other classes, just a way to keep up with all the materials that I give you every day that we meet. If you want to use a folder or something like that, that is completely up to you, not a problem. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. Food and drink are allowed. I'm just going to ask that you clean up after yourself because I still do have mice in this room. So I know they're here because they're leaving little gifts for me on my desk. So as long as we try to just cut off the food supply, hopefully they'll. Ma'am, are you very afraid of mice? Are you afraid of mice? Oh, yeah, well, we got mice in here, so it's okay. If you see one dart across the floor, just let me know. We got a mouse trap up here, but haven't caught anything yet. He's a pretty clever little guy, so we'll see. If you have to come in for help, or maybe you missed something, like you were absent the day of a quiz, and you got to go ahead and take that. Here are my tutoring times. It's going to be every morning except Wednesdays, because Wednesdays are what? Those are the late start days, from 7:45 to 8:05, and I have after-school tutorials Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but by appointment only. So as long as you give me a heads up, I can go ahead and carve out some time and make sure that I'm going to be here if you're able to come in. Okay. We'll talk about this in just a moment in more detail, but at this point, we're 2.5 weeks in, so you know that cell phone law. Okay, the folks I've already familiar with. You've been doing a fantastic job. For everybody else, just make sure cell phones are out of sight, no earbuds, smartwatches, things of that nature. Okay. And then if you ever have to get a hold of me, or if your parents want to get a hold of me, patrick.west@lubbockisd.org. In fact, every Sunday before the upcoming week, I go ahead and send out an email to all the parents for all of my students that I teach. So yesterday, you would have gotten one for PSAT. Did your parents mention anything about that? No? Okay, well, that's all right. That's all right. So that is our syllabus. Any questions on that? That kind of governs classroom and campus policies, things of that nature. Okay. So now let's go ahead and talk about the classroom itself. So you're going to be seeing these for a while. I'm going to be mentioning them. Just do your best to be on time. I know today was kind of an unusual one because we were switching and some people forgot, and that's okay. That's not a problem. Any time you walk in, any materials that are up on this front bookshelf, that's what we're going to be working with for the day. So you want to go ahead and grab those, be in your seat and ready to begin when the bell rings, follow directions. I'll usually start with some kind of classroom highlights, just to let you know housekeeping items, what's going to be happening throughout the week. We're going to be using calculators. We're not going to need them today, though, but we're always going to make sure within the last 5 minutes that our calculators are back up front. Unfortunately, last year I did lose track of one, so I've got to really pay attention and make sure this year that I don't lose any more of those calculators because they are not cheap. And then we already talked about the no electronics, cell phones, earbuds, smartwatches, all that good stuff. Questions on that? We're good to go? Okay. Then let's go ahead and move on. Okay. So let's kind of talk about the new PSAT. So I say new, but it changed a few years ago. A lot of things are still pretty consistent, but there's still a lot of new options here that you may or may not be familiar with. We're going to be taking the PSAT come October, so that's not a lot of time for us to really do anything. So the goal is, as you get into your junior year, then hopefully we're going to be able to see a big boost on your scores. Okay, who knows? Maybe we can get one during your sophomore year. We'll kind of see how that plays out. I know we got some juniors in here, but typically this is a sophomore class. Okay, so what are we looking at when it comes to the math? We've got 2 sections. They're now divided up into 2 modules. Each one is going to have 22 questions. Okay, so you got 44 questions each. Now, when it comes to the math, you have the same amount of time for both of these. Modules 1 and 2, you got 35 minutes for 22 questions. So if you do the math on that, you're looking at about 1.59 questions per minute. Okay, so you want to go ahead and move at an uncomfortable pace. When you get to the real thing, trust yourself. You've worked and done all the everything we've asked you to. Your teachers have prepared you. You're ready to go. You don't want to start second guessing yourself on the PSAT. And you may not be aware, or maybe you are, that after you take Module 1, depending on your score, it will divert you to an easier or a more difficult Module 2. Okay. How many people were already aware of that? Okay, so a few folks. So it depends on how you score. If you score kind of low, it's probably going to go ahead and shove you towards that easier module. If you score really well, it's going to go ahead and push you towards the more difficult. Okay. And if you want, at some point we can go ahead and look at how the scoring works, but I don't really think that's necessary. I already mentioned that they're going to be 35 minutes apiece, so you do want to be working at a brisk pace. Okay. It says, let's go back here for a second. Okay, so about 3/4 of the math question use the 4-option multiple choice, while the remaining questions are going to be student-produced responses. So those are the free response. Now, back in the day, it used to be 1/4 of a point deduction for every incorrect answer. What is it now? Nothing. There is no deduction at all for a wrong answer. So what does that mean for multiple choice? Even if you're not sure, make your best guess. Choose the answer that you think might be the most reasonable, especially when it comes to the student response problems. Those are a little more difficult because there's not an answer choice in front of you. But again, just think about what answer works best within the confines of the problem. Hopefully you're able to come up with some kind of strategy where you're able to come up with a result, but at the very least, always, always, always put in an answer because you never know. You might get it correct. There's no penalty, so you might as well go ahead and do that. Okay, here's the distribution. So algebra includes things like linear equations, 1 and 2 variables, systems, things of that nature. You're looking at about 35%. So a little more than 1/3 of it. Advanced math, these will be nonlinear equations, nonlinear functions, rational, exponential, things of that nature. That's looking to be about 32.5%. In the past couple of years, they've really bumped up this particular section. So problem solving and data analysis. Now, when we say data analysis, we're talking about like measures of central tendency. Can anybody tell me what I'm referring to when I say that? You may not recognize the measures of central tendency, but as soon as I say the 3 items, you'll probably remember. Mean, median, and mode. Those are showing up a lot more nowadays on grouped problems. Also, who's familiar with what's called standard deviation? They're pretty much putting a standard deviation problem or 2 on every one of the new PSAT tests now. The good news is you don't have to know the formula. You don't have to calculate standard deviation. As long as you have an understanding of what standard deviation is, you should be able to answer whatever problem they give you on the PSAT. Now, when it kind of leads us into another topic. Another difference from the old PSAT, there used to be a section with no calculator and a section with a calculator. What is there now? You can use a calculator on every single problem. Now, right off the bat, do I recommend doing that? No, trust yourself, okay? You only use the calculator if you have some kind of really horrible calculation that you wouldn't be able to do by hand or in your head, okay? But going along with this, I can show you, if you'd like, how to calculate standard deviation, but I just don't think it's necessary. As long as you understand it, you're going to be just fine. How many people in here already know what standard deviation is? Oh, right. So that's something new I get to teach you. Fantastic. Okay. And then going back to good old geometry and trigonometry, that's going to be about 12.5% of the test, so not a lot. You know, when it comes to trigonometry, I know that looks like a really scary word, but you remember in geometry, SOHCAHTOA? Sine, cosine, and tangent. If you remember those 3 and their ratios, you're good. They don't go beyond that on the PSAT. Geometry, you're probably going to have a lot of diagrams, probably similar figures with triangles. They might go ahead and give you circle problems, have you find an angle, area of a sector, arc length, all kinds of that stuff. Okay, but there's that breakdown. And then we got a lot of strategies that we're going to be talking with. All right, so read the section directions before the test. Honestly, by taking this class, you're going to know and be very familiar with the PSAT, so I don't know if at that point it would be really necessary, but I would definitely go ahead and use your POOD. We use a lot of acronyms in mathematics. Anybody think they know what POOD stands for? No, not even a guess. Personal order of, what was that? Duty? Good D word, but not the one I'm looking for. Difficulty. Personal order of difficulty. Now, everybody is going to take a state test or a college board test, and they have their own ways of doing things. Now, I know some students who are going to start with number 1, and they're going to work through every single problem all the way to the end. I know some students in the past, they've started with the very last problem, and they work backwards. Because for them, it seems to get easier. You start with the more difficult, and you work with the easier. But what we say in here when we're saying POOD, personal order of difficulty, this means start with number 1. Move on to number 2. But the second you come across a problem where maybe you're not understanding what it's wanting you to do, or let's say you are understanding what it wants you to find, but you're going to have several calculations that go along with that. It's going to take you some time. Skip it. Work those problems that you feel the most comfortable with. Okay. Then at the end, with all that time remaining, then you want to go back, spend more time on those problems that were going to take longer or be more difficult. You don't want to go ahead and start in early, get stuck on a problem, be there for 6 or 7 minutes, and then you've still got a good, 17, 18 problems left with a short amount of time. Okay, does that make sense? Okay, so that's what POOD is. Personal what? Order of difficulty. Okay. Eliminate incorrect answers. This is the POE strategy. Process of elimination. Now, here's the thing about the PSAT, and I've never agreed with this, but this is how College Board does it. They will try to trick you. They have several questions on every test that I've seen that try to trick a student into choosing a wrong answer. Okay? Because they know how students are taught. They know what operations or calculations students are likely to go ahead and try to make. So they're going to put answers that you could conceivably come across. And what makes a student feel better on a multiple choice test that you come up with an answer and you see it listed there? It makes you feel really good, right? Got to be careful. Always know what the question is wanting of you. So anything you can do to eliminate incorrect answers is going to get you closer to the correct one. Okay. Be neat. Now, a lot of these are kind of obsolete now, like use your test booklet. Why is that one obsolete? Yeah, because they don't have paper copies anymore. It's now all digital. You're going to have a scratch sheet of paper that you're going to be required to turn in once you're done with the exam as well. But I would say, just try to be as neat as possible, okay, on your scratch work. Avoid stray marks, really doesn't matter. Your first response is usually correct. Go with your gut, okay? Now, if you have time at the end, that's when you go back, you start looking over your answers again, looking at your work. Am I agreeing with my original assessment, okay? But don't second guess yourself the first time, okay? Go with your first idea, see what happens, okay? Don't skip answers, guess. We already talked about there's no penalty for this. So have everything filled out on your test. Okay, pay attention, budget your time, take care of the easy questions first. Okay, make sure you understand what the question wants. Like for example, if you've got one of those paragraph questions, usually associated with maybe a system or some kind of real world scenario, I always encourage my students to read the last sentence first. Why would that be? Yeah, because the last sentence is usually the question. That's what it's wanting you to find. So if you already go into the question knowing what they want, you can start to sort through the information. Because will they give you information that you don't need? Absolutely. I'm going to show you a problem this week where you don't need 2/3 of it. Okay, it's going to be super easy to do that. We don't have to deal with these anymore. The gridables, that is. Now it's all just blank. You'll just go ahead and put your answer in, so we don't have to worry about gridding them. Okay, that's something to worry about. And then we're going to go ahead and start looking at some problems. Okay, so I would say let's go ahead and get to it. Because the one thing you've been thinking about for probably 2 weeks, you've been in English, you're like, man, I want to do some math. When am I finally going to do some math? I want to do some math, right? Yeah, so now we're in math. Let's do some math. Okay. Here we go. So we're going to go ahead and work a couple of these together. We're going to talk about some strategies. I'll even talk about a strategy or two that we haven't mentioned. And then I'll have you go ahead and try one of these like that. Cool. Yes. We do have SEO in this lesson. Yes. So Friday is going to be our first one. So if you're not sure what that means, don't worry. Friday comes around, I will go ahead and let you know. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a look at this number one. So we got 3 problems total. We're going to go ahead and do the first 2 together. So it says a landscaper is designing a rectangular fountain with a 4-foot wide path around it. The equation A equals 4P plus 64 will relate the area A in square feet of the path to the perimeter P in feet of the fountain. In the design, how many feet will the perimeter of the fountain increase for each additional square foot of the path's area? Now, in a perfect world, we would absolutely want you to go ahead and use the algebra the way you were taught, but what are we really concerned with in this class for the PSAT? We're just wanting to make sure you get the answer right. We're wanting you to make sure you do better on the PSAT when you take it, and we want to make sure you can raise your score. Okay, because a lot of colleges, they're going to look at the PSAT, the SAT, and things of that nature. Okay, so there's a couple different ways you could, if needed. If there's never a picture, you could always draw a visual to kind of help you organize your thoughts and see exactly what's happening. But for this one, I'm going to say the strategy, test the test. So what this refers to is we're going to go ahead and use the answers themselves to help me figure out which one is correct. Okay, so let's get right to it. Now, what I'm going to need from this problem is this right here. So the area of this rectangular fountain is going to be 4p plus 64, where p is what? Where p is the perimeter in feet of the fountain. Well, look at the last sentence here. It says, how many feet will the perimeter of the fountain increase for each additional square foot of the path's area? So what we're doing is we're trying to see how is the perimeter changing for 1 unit increase in that area. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and start with an easy area. We're actually going to go ahead and plug in values of our choosing. Let's say that the area of the fountain, let's say 100 square feet, something really easy to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and set that equal to 4p plus 64. Okay. Now, what are we overly concerned with here? What is p again? It's the perimeter of this fountain, right? Well, let's go ahead and solve this for p. Okay, so what's 100 minus 64? 36 is equal to 4p. Okay, and now I'm going to go ahead and divide through by 4. So I got p is what? P is 9. Okay. So I randomly chose an area to go ahead and plug into this function right here. So I got a value for the perimeter p. Is everybody with me? Okay. Now, we're wanting to know how the perimeter changes if I do what? Okay. If the area increases by 1 square foot. Now, I originally chose 100. What do you think I'm going to use now? 101. See, we're increasing the area by 1 square foot. So I'm going to say 101 is equal to 4p plus 64. Okay. Now, let's solve for p again. But this time, what's 101 minus 64? 37. So 37 is equal to 4p. And now, once again, I'm going to go ahead and divide through by 4. Okay. So what is 37 fourths as a mixed number? 9 and 1/4. Or if you wanted to go ahead and put 9.25, you'll still be able to get the answer that way. But take a look at what we did. Okay. We actually chose a value to plug into this scenario. So I went from 100 square feet to 101 square feet, just like the question asks. How did the perimeter change? It increased by 1/4. Now remember, the thing about these PSAT problems, there's going to be a lot of different ways to get to the right answer. And as we go along, that's what I'm going to want you folks to help me out with. Because I might show you how I work the problem, but then I want to see another perspective. Maybe you solved it a different way. Maybe that could help everybody out. That's what I want to do. Okay, so let's do this. So this one says, figure is not drawn to scale. Typically, they're not going to be. So triangle ABC above is isosceles. Now, vocabulary is going to be super important on the PSAT and the SAT. What does that mean, isosceles? Okay, so we have 2 equal lengths. 2 of the sides are going to be the same length. So it tells me that AB is going to be congruent to AC. Remember, we use those little tick marks to our notation for that. And then it says that, well, we know that AB equals AC. We know that BC, the full length of this base right here, is going to be 48. Okay, now it says the ratio of DE to DF is 5:7. Now, just because they used a colon here, that's just another way of showing a ratio, a fraction. So this is the same as if they said the ratio of DE to DF is 5/7. Okay, so they just wrote it in a different way. So don't let that worry you at all. Okay, now knowing this, what's the length of DC? So I want to know this one right here. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and give you a couple minutes to look at this. Let's see if you can come up with the answer. Now, if you're stuck, I'm going to give you one hint. Similarity. So let's think about that. Let me go ahead and give you a couple of minutes. Let's see if you can come up with the answer. 50. Okay, 55 seconds. All right, here we go. Okay, so I can show you how I solved it, but I'm more interested. Anybody have an idea, or anybody think they know what the answer is? Okay. Well, how about we take a poll? Okay, so raise your hand when I call out what you believe is the right answer. How many people think it's A? Okay, no takers on A, B, C, nobody? D. Okay, and how many people are not going to vote? There we go. Okay, a couple people didn't vote. Okay, so it looks like mostly D. Is that what people are thinking? Why? Like, what do we have that'll justify that? Because it's great if we know the answer, but it's even better if we know how to get there, if we have a strategy that'll help us. Okay. Well, here was my hint, similarity. So let's start there. What does that mean? Okay, so the same shape, just different what? Go. Same shape, different sizes. So let's say I have a triangle like this, and then the exact same triangle, it's just larger or smaller, whatever the case is. Hello.
Sorry, right, Mr. West. Do you have one of those 5x8 deals to turn in my absentees? She didn't have it.
Oh, I believe I do. Yeah, no problem. There you go, sir. Okay. Now, what we're talking about with similarity is all the corresponding angles are going to be congruent. So I know this angle will be congruent to this angle, this one with this one. I'll go ahead and put this one with this one. And all the corresponding side lengths will be in proportion to each other. Okay. So like this side right here would correspond to this one. Now, I'm not saying they're congruent. I'm saying that when you create ratios, that's going to create proportions. Okay. Well, notice we've got two triangles inside the bottom of this really large triangle in our diagram. Okay. Well, would they be similar? Let's see, we already know that the larger triangle is isosceles. So I know that this base angle would correspond to this base angle. Okay. Do those other two small triangles have another angle in common? They both have 90-degree angles. Okay. So if two triangles each have two pairs of angles that are congruent, what do we know about that last pair? Would these be congruent as well? Yeah, absolutely. And you remember those postulates from in geometry? This is angle, 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 side, angle, side, 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 side. Do those sound familiar? That's what I'm referring to here. Okay. All right, so we know that these two triangles are similar. They're the exact same shape, they're just different sizes. So what we're trying to figure out is the length of DC. Okay, so these are my possible lengths right here. And the only thing they're giving me to help is the fact that the ratio is 5/7. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and use the answers again to help me out. Okay. So let's say, for example, we believe that A is correct. Let's say that I believe the length of DC is 12. Well, remember, the full length from BC is 48. So what would the length from B to DB? What's 48 minus 12? That'd be 36. Well, you'll notice it says the ratio from DE to DF, so we're going from the smaller to the larger, has got to give me this. So if I take a ratio 36 over 12, is that going to give me 5/7? Now, that's what I'm referring to when I say proportion, where one ratio or fraction equals another one. Okay, so that's not going to work. But basically, that right there is how we're going to go ahead and check to see which one is correct. Now, you said you believe what answer is right? D. Okay, so let's say we believe it's D. So if I say that from D to C is 28, what's B to D? Okay, that would only be 20. Now, if I take that ratio of 20 to 28, will that give me 5/7? Absolutely will. Now, there's a way you can go ahead and check that. I mean, typically, how do you solve a proportion? Hey, cross multiply, right? Okay. Remember, some of your teachers may have referred to that as like the butterfly method, something like that. I mean, I like it. It just kind of bugs me. Yeah, thank you, Carlos. I appreciate it. Thank you. So yeah, 7 times 20 is 5 times 28. So you can go ahead and check it that way. So there we go. Right. Okay, so we've worked a couple together. I know what you're thinking. I want to do one on my own, right? So many smiling faces out there. Let's do it. Here is yours. Okay, so we got a couple of equations here, or functions, I should say. Speed time, and position speed. So an arrow is launched upward with an initial speed of 100 meters per second. The equations above describe the constant acceleration motion of the arrow, where v naught. So if you ever have a subscript that's 0, we refer to that as naught. So v naught is the initial speed of the arrow. V is the speed of the arrow as it's moving up in the air. H is the height of the arrow above the ground. T is the time elapsed since the arrow was projected upward. And G is the acceleration due to gravity, 9.8 meters per second squared. So there's 2 questions you have coming off this problem. What is the maximum height from the ground that the arrow will rise to the nearest meter? And how long will it take for the arrow to reach its maximum height to the nearest 1/10 of a second? Okay. Now, believe it or not, you already know everything you need to about quadratics in order to solve this problem. I'm going to go ahead and get you started. Okay. All of your coordinates are going to look like this. Your x value represents your time, while the y value represents the height of the rocket. Okay. So, anybody recognize that notation right there? The opposite of b divided by 2a, and then f of the opposite of b over 2a? Some yes, some no. That is what you can use if you have the standard form of a quadratic to go ahead and immediately find its vertex. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and give you an example. Okay, so not that one. Here we go. Let's say I have this one right here. F of x equals x squared minus 4x plus 7. Okay. So what I'm going to do here is going to help you with that problem we're currently looking at. Everybody's with me? So this is the standard form of a quadratic, ax squared plus bx plus c. So we have a is 1, b is a -4, and then c is a 7. I want to find what the vertex is. And there's a ton of ways to do that, but that notation is a lot more direct. You don't have to do as much algebra as on the others. So it's going to look like this. The opposite of b divided by 2a, and then f of the opposite of b over 2a. All right. So let's talk about what this means. I'm going to set up my vertex right here. Okay. Well, the x value is represented by this expression, the opposite of b divided by 2a. Okay. Well, I'm looking at my standard form. B is -4. So what's the opposite? 4 over 2 times a. Okay. So does 2, because A is 1, right? Okay. And we know 4 halves is what? 2. Right there, you've already got half of your vertex. So now I'm going to use this value, whatever you come up with, to help you figure out what the corresponding y value is. That's where this comes in. Does anybody remember function notation? Like if I were to give you, for this right here, if I said f of 5, what would you do? Every x I would replace with 5. So x squared would become 5 squared minus 4x minus 4 times 5 plus 7. Okay. And then I'd be able to evaluate that. Well, here, see, it's using the same expression. So whatever you find for x, that's what you're going to plug back into your function. So here we want f of 2. So x squared, that becomes 2 squared, minus 4x, minus 4 times 2, and then plus 7. So let's see here. 2 squared, 4, minus 4 times 2 is 8, plus 7. So 4 minus 8, plus 7. 3. So the vertex of this quadratic would be at 2, 3. So why am I showing you this? Because this is exactly what you're going to do here. Ooh, there we go. Come on. So they've given you the information. What you need to do is go ahead and create your standard form quadratic. You find the vertex, you've got the answer to both of those questions. Yeah, I'll even go one step further and I'll help you out. Remember how I said they were going to sometimes give you information that you didn't need? They gave you 3 functions here. Now, while you could theoretically go ahead and use all of them, the only one that I actually used was the middle one, the position time. Because let's think about this. Did they give you a value for V naught? Okay. Remember, V naught is the initial speed, so do they give you that? They give you V naught, initial speed. Do they give you G, the acceleration due to gravity? Yes. So see, you've got the values. You can plug those in. You find this, you're home free. Okay. All right. So that's where I'm going to go ahead and stop today. Because when we come in tomorrow, I'm going to give you maybe 5-10 minutes. Go ahead and finish this problem up, and then we'll go ahead and talk about this. You definitely want to bring this back because this is going to be your first grade. Okay. All right. Questions? Fantastic.